Welcome into WeAreSC. Welcome into Four Downs. This is Erik McKinney, joined by Katz. Greg, we are talking the number 10 undefeated USC Trojans going to South Bend to take on a 5-2 Notre Dame team. Number 21, still a very good Notre Dame team. I think maybe you had that Ohio State game early, and there were thoughts early in the year of if these two teams can get there undefeated, this will be a monumental game. Still a big game for both programs, I think, for what they want to do the rest of the season. But let's jump into, again, four downs. First down, as we always do, the USC offense on the field. Greg, the one thing, the biggest thing that you're looking for when USC's offense has the ball out there?
That they score and score and score again. And when they're done, they score some more. And that might be hindered by two factors. One, the weather, which by all accounts is going to be unsettling, rainy, possibly. You wonder about, some of the things on the field and what have you. But the point is Notre Dame is going to win this game based on one major factor, unless it's the magic of the dome. They're going to ball control USC. They're going to try to ram it right up the main street on the ground with Audric Estime, and they're going to try to limit the possessions USC can have and score at the same time. And the problem is that Notre Dame has still got a good offensive line led by an All-America tackle in Joe Alt. And the fact of the matter is they have an excellent NFL-style running back in Estime. And if they're going against USC's biggest weakness, rush defense, and that's a bad combination, especially if it's bad weather. So I'm going to be looking at those factors in the game because I can't remember a game that I think is so cut out for following what's on paper than this one.
I love that the USC defense has been such a talking point all season, and as well it should be, that on this point when we're talking USC offense, it's still about the USC defense, right? I mean, that's so for me, USC offense on the field, I want to see, or I'm going to be watching, can they get going quickly? Can they get going early? You cannot afford 3 straight 3-and-outs again to open this game. I do not think USC on the road at Notre Dame against this team can come back if it's a 17-0 deficit like we saw at Arizona, where there was just no momentum. That being a home game against an Arizona team that made a couple mistakes and let USC back into it, I don't think you're going to get that certainly not at Notre Dame Stadium, and certainly not against a very veteran, experienced Notre Dame team. So I think on the flip side, and forget about kind of USC playing defense or what can they do, USC offensively, if they can come out and really take it to Notre Dame, we've seen them jump out 14-0 and get really going against some good teams in the past. Last year, I mean, almost all their losses came after they jumped out to big leads. But if they can do that, there's some concern, I think, in this Notre Dame program right now. I don't think there was any type of embarrassment with losing close to Ohio State. The way they lost at the end and the questions that served up to Marcus Freeman about coaching ability and decisions and all of that, finishing the game with 10 men on the field, needing a late touchdown drive against Duke where your offense kind of sputtered throughout, and then kind of getting run off the field at Louisville where you couldn't get anything done offensively through 3 interceptions, and Louisville kind of controlled the game against Notre Dame on the ground, ran it 40 times, and Notre Dame's run game could not get going. I'm curious if USC can offensively come out and run a couple drives up and get out to a lead, what happens kind of to that stadium? And I don't want to undersell Notre Dame fans. They can be that stadium when USC's there can be as loud as it gets in college football. But I'm curious, this Notre Dame team has played 3 straight really difficult games against good teams. Are they in it? Are they in it if they're looking up and it's 14-0 early or 17-0 early and they're on the downside of that? So I think USC could help itself out greatly by getting off to a really good start on offense. And we've seen it before. This last week against Arizona was the first time all season USC didn't take its opening drive for a touchdown. They do that almost constantly under Lincoln Riley. So I think that sets up potentially for a really good way for USC to get out, limit the crowd a little bit, and put themselves in a good position where Notre Dame can't rely just on its run game to kind of milk a lead and kill clock. So with second down, we'll get into that flip side that I know you want to talk about, the USC defense. For second down, when USC's defense is on the field, what are you looking for, either from the Notre Dame offense or specifically that USC defense?
Well, I'm looking at the corners. I mean, honestly speaking, I don't think Notre Dame has as good a receivers as they've had in the past. I do think Hartman's a good quarterback. I think if he gets hot, he can cause a lot of problems, especially if they get on a yo-yo of passing and running. Okay. Now, SC is one of the nation's leaders in sacks, which is great. Hartman is not overly mobile, but he's mobile enough that he'll sidestep, but he can be hit, and he can be hit repeatedly. We've seen that. The key here is, again, going back to underscore what you said, the Notre Dame crowd is very interesting. I've been there when they get down. When they get down, it's like being in mass. You don't hear them. They're not. The key is all of a sudden it's like poking the bear, so to speak. If they get up, crowd is incredibly intense, but they don't stay intense when they're down. And so if SC can do that defensively, what I'm hoping is that there aren't a lot of missed tackles. They can't afford. Estime can really break tackles, and once he gets open, he can really move for a guy who's about 230 pounds. And again, it goes back to what I thought the last couple of weeks is the confidence of the SC defense. How confident are they? If things start to go bad, is it here we go again in this type of environment? That'll take a lot of leadership on the part of Mason Cobb and some of the others to make sure they don't collapse. So that's what I'm looking at.
All right, I've got a couple Notre Dame players as kind of keys for this. You mentioned Audric Estime. I am curious how much of the load they give to him. Notre Dame's got a couple backs, Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. I think Jeremiah Love is interesting because he can run the ball up the middle and through contact too, and has some speed. I think that Estime is probably the guy. And if USC can load up against him, I would feel comfortable if Sam Hartman has to throw for 450 yards in this game for Notre Dame to win. I'm not saying he can't. We've seen any quarterback. We've seen quarterbacks come out in street clothes and throw the ball for 400 yards on occasion against this USC defense the last year and a half. So I'm not saying that is going to win the game for USC, but you feel more comfortable if it becomes a Caleb Hartman battle, right? Rather than Notre Dame just plotting for 15 play, all rushing touchdown drives throughout the game. Like that's not the game that USC wants to get in. So I think it's two big guys that are going to force USC to play tough, physical defense. And the question mark is huge as to whether USC can do that. And for me, that's Audric Estime, and receiving Mitchell Evans, that tight end. Notre Dame tight ends should be familiar to USC fans. I mean, they kind of send them out all year. And last year, USC struggled with the tight end. They haven't really seen the kind of first round tight end talent that hurt them last year against Utah and Notre Dame as well. I don't know kind of where Evans is on draft boards or any of that stuff. He leads them in receptions and yards, and he can do damage over the middle of the field. USC's safeties, when they've been matched up against really good, strong, big physical tight ends, have not done all that well. And the linebackers have had problems. Kind of Notre Dame will run a lot of that kind of mesh stuff with receivers and let tight ends get loose underneath all that traffic. I'm curious how that goes, because this is a guy who could catch 12 to 15 passes if Notre Dame sees holes over the middle of the field and they want to feed him the ball. So limiting those two guys, I think, is probably pretty key. And again, if you get beat one-on-one somewhere else, you try to let your athletes make plays and see what happens. But I don't think USC can just let Estime run wild and let Mitchell Evans run over the middle of the field in one-on-one coverage against linebackers and safeties. That is going to be a couple tough matchups for the USC defense. But again, Hartman is interesting because Louisville kind of messed with him a little bit. 3 sort of bad interceptions that he had there. I don't know. I'm curious if he can do it against USC. Again, we've seen plenty of quarterbacks do it. So he's certainly talented.
They had 5 turnovers against Louisville. Mm-hmm. The Louisville fans were into that game from beginning to end, and I think he got rattled. I think their whole team got rattled. I think they're a worn down team. They played in tough physical games leading into SC. It's going to be a question to me: can SC be as tough and physical as who they've played? I'm talking about Notre Dame has played, because if Notre Dame feels that they can control physically that game, they're going to have a burst of energy. And the question is SC going to get knocked down? Are they going to get back up? It's going to be a slugfest. And again, I don't know if I've raised this, but today I asked Lincoln Riley, had he ever been to Notre Dame or coached in a game? And he said he's never been to Notre Dame. And then I said, well, have you ever taken your team on a walkthrough on a Friday? Are you planning on doing it? And he said, no. He says they're not leaving till Friday morning, and because of the schedule and yada, 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 which I respected. He did say he's seen Rudy 5,000 times, excuse me. But I am concerned about that as a factor, because I don't know, it seems like every time I've been to Notre Dame, and I've been going since the 1970s, 80s, you know what? Every time I go, it's like the first time I've been there. There's something about it. And if you're a coach and you've never coached in it and you get caught up in it, I'm not saying he will, but I know that he would say, I've coached in the Red River rivalry. This is different. And the players on his team. You could just say, well, the freshmen might succumb to the aura of Rudy and everything else that goes into it. But how many players on this team have played at Notre Dame? That's the thing. I mean, you've never played there. And I think, as you well stated, if Notre Dame gets up and that crowd gets into it, it's almost like you're floating to try to grasp onto something to get back into the game. So I am a little concerned about no walkthrough on Friday. And, strange things happen at Notre Dame Stadium. It really does.
Yeah, I just don't think there's a whole lot of expectation anymore for this USC defense. I think you need maybe a couple second down sacks that leave really difficult third down conversions, and maybe a football bounces your way here and there, and you get a turnover or two. Louisville showed that you can stop this Notre Dame offense, right? I mean, Notre Dame ran for 44 yards against Louisville. It's not Notre Dame's in the top 40, but barely in total offense, 54th in rushing. This isn't a absolutely dominant, devastating Notre Dame offense. Teams have gotten right against this USC defense. They have to show up. I think they know that. I think this staff and this team have been looking forward to this game, and maybe it's cost them some kind of performance points against the last few teams. But the test is here, right? It's midterm week for Notre Dame. This is almost USC's finals, right? Like you need to keep your season together in this game. You got to come out and play, and you can't. What you mentioned, I think, is important. USC can't let Notre Dame come out and see, oh, this is not a physical game. The SC is going to try to finesse this, and it's a little bit of a break for USC. Notre Dame should be exhausted by halftime based on the games they've played recently and what USC tries to do. I think that's a really interesting thing to watch if USC's defense can kind of step up and play that kind of game. Let's go to third down. Third down is our PrizePicks section. Thanks to our friend at PrizePicks. There isn't a better way to enjoy watching your favorite team than by playing daily fantasy with our friends at PrizePicks. You simply select 2 to 6 players, predict if they will go more or less than their PrizePicks projection. You can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. For PrizePicks, all first-time users that deposit and use the promo code SC will receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Visit PrizePicks online or download the app, enter promo code SC. Greg, last week we were about 5-6, I think, Marshawn Lloyd rushing yards away from getting there. We went with less. Remember on Caleb Williams and Shedeur Sanders combining for some ridiculously high number of passing yards. So this week, what I went with, I went offense and almost immediately regretting based on kind of some thoughts and maybe that weather, right? If it ends up being rainy and it slows things down or just the atmosphere kind of gets to people. But we talked about what can USC do against that Notre Dame running game. I'm less than optimistic at this point. Would love to be wrong, but Audric Estime, the number here, 96.5 rush yards. Arizona had a running back that went well over 100 yards. Arizona State had a running back that went over 100 yards. I see him getting to 100 yards. The hope is that USC makes him earn it, right? The hope is that he's got to do 20 plus carries to get to just 100 yards. If he's breaking tackles at the line and in the second level and ripping off 15, 17, 19, 25 yard carries, that could be a really long day for USC. But on the other side, I saw Taj Washington at 56.5 receiving yards. I went more on that really quickly. I think he has a chance to do some damage in this one. I think Notre Dame likes their outside cornerbacks. I'm curious how they feel about those USC slot receivers, and Taj Washington has a way of kind of popping up in big moments and in big games. I like him. And then this is maybe a fool me 3 times kind of thing with Marshawn Lloyd, but the number was a little lower, 72.5. We were talking mid 90s the last few weeks, 72.5. I think USC has to get him more than that. And I know maybe we'll see some Austin Jones, maybe the little short dump off kind of play action passing game is incorporated as kind of some runs. But I think if USC wants to come out and set the tone, it's got to be that offensive line, and Marshawn Lloyd's got to do some damage on the ground there. So again, maybe that's a little bit wishful, but I think even when Marshawn Lloyd seems to have kind of rough games or the USC running game doesn't seem like it's clicking or it's great, he's still kind of mid 80s rushing so far that we've seen. So anyway, so those are the ones that I went with. Curious, there's a lot of run game talk in there. What jumps out to you about maybe that aspect for both teams?
Well, I think that Estime will run for more yards than what's listed. I think I'd be an idiot not to, if I was going to roll the dice and spend money. That's what I would do. As far as Taj Washington, he's the perfect guy for this type of game. He's the type of guy that everyone's going to be looking at. Brendan Rice and son of Jerry Rice, yada, yada, Dorian Singer, he's going to, and oh yeah, by the way, Deuce Robinson could come in, out of nowhere and be a hero. But I think this is right up Taj's alley. If the weather isn't bad, he could do some damage. Okay, he could do some damage. In terms of the running game for SC with the Marshawn Lloyd, I think it's going to be up to the offensive coordinator and the offensive line. Now, if SC's offensive coordinator by the way, he's the head coach of USC, Lincoln Riley, decides he wants to run the ball, then it's up to the offensive line to be able to execute it. I'm not overly optimistic in some ways about the interior of the SC offensive line. They're making changes. I think Mason Murphy might start at the right tackle in place of Tarquin. That it just seems that Notre Dame has a very experienced defense. They have a really good linebacker in Bertrand. He can play, and they've got good down linemen. So when you keep mixing it all together in the washing machine, you say, well, what are we going to get here? I don't think that Lloyd, he has a capability of it. I just don't think he's going to get that many yards on an individual basis because, if Lincoln starts getting into his passing mode, which he should if they're successful, okay. I don't see how he's going to do it unless he breaks off a 70-yarder.
That'd be fine.
Yeah, that'd be great. Could you guarantee that?
No, I cannot. All right, let's go to our fourth down here. Your number, your stat. What's calling to you in this game?
I think I'm gonna have to go where it always goes. Caleb Williams. I think the stat is gonna have to be 300 yards passing. And as a sidebar to it, he's going to have to throw 4 or 5 touchdown passes. So 300 and 4, 2 separate categories are the 2 numbers that I'm looking at. And of course, I guess the other number would be 0 interceptions. That would help too.
I'm going to go with 500. And that's going to be, again, if we're talking more or less, hopefully less total yards for Notre Dame. USC gave up well over 500 to Colorado. They gave up 500 to Arizona, just over 500. This Notre Dame team, they're coming off a game where they had fewer than 300 total yards at Louisville. We talked about the turnovers and certainly the atmosphere that Notre Dame's going to be playing in is not going to be the same that they saw last week. But the USC defense has got to do something, right? They've got to show up a little bit. They've got to start playing because, again, USC, that 17-0 hole that they dug out of against Arizona, there's going to be times where the USC offense struggles a little bit. If the defense can't kind of keep Notre Dame specifically on the road with that running game held in check a little bit, this one I think could end up going a little bit sideways. I think that Notre Dame will try to kind of out muscle and out tough and out all of that stuff. And call me absolutely crazy when we talk again after the game. I think that the USC defense is probably up for that challenge. I think that they kind of rise to the occasion and can get it done against this Notre Dame offense. Again, I think that there's been so much focus for them about sort of this is when the season starts and this is where we need to have our A game, that I think that they can do enough, right? This USC defense is not holding anybody to 6 points or even 13 or maybe even 17 all year.
So hopeful. Right? That's so hopeful.
But low 20s, mid 20s, that kind of stuff, that wins you a game. I mean, that the way that they, I say held Arizona after that start, it was ultimately in regulation, should have been enough for USC to win that game. If they can keep Notre Dame again, even around, 400 total yards and 28 points, something like that. I think that the USC offense and team would love its chances with that. So,
okay, I want to ask you a question before we leave. Can I ask
here we
you a
go.
question? It's a bonus prize pick question. Dennis Lynch, the place kicker for USC, does he kick 3 field goals or less than 3 field goals?
I think he gets
Would
2.
you like that question? First of all,
I think he gets
question?
2 field goals in this one.
All right. Well, that's a little something for bonus prize pick.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't see him in there. We'll get field goal kickers into the mix at some point. So anyway, if you were making your way out to South Bend, hope you enjoy it. If not, make sure you check in. It's a 4:30 p.m. Pacific time kick. Again, USC looking to stay undefeated in with the greatest intersectional rivalry in college football. And I still think that it's that, right? Some of the teams moving conferences and all of that stuff is taken away from some of the rivalries. I think this one still really, really matters. And I think we're going to get a sense of that when we're there. I'm really, even with the rain, looking forward to the atmosphere and all of that always comes with USC Notre Dame. So again, enjoy watching your Trojans take on the Irish. Thanks for watching 4 Downs. Thanks for watching WeAreSC. For Greg Katz, this has been Erik McKinney.